The weight of failure. The city skyline stretched endlessly before him, a vast sea of glowing lights and towering skyscrapers. Yet, to Michael Davenport, it had never looked so empty. Standing in his office, a grand space with floor-to-ceiling windows and an air of success that now felt hollow, he exhaled heavily, rubbing his temples. The weight of failure pressed against his chest, suffocating him. His company, Davenport Industries, once a name synonymous with innovation and excellence, was on the verge of collapse. He turned away from the view and stared at his mahogany desk, now cluttered with bills, contract terminations, and rejection letters from every investor he had reached out to in a desperate attempt to save his company. Employees had resigned, partners had pulled out, and their financial reports painted a picture so bleak that even the most optimistic analyst would admit defeat. He had done everything: cost-cutting, restructuring, selling assets, even considering an acquisition that would strip him of ownership. Nothing had worked. A sharp knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. It was James Carter, his CFO, looking grim, his usual confident stride replaced by weary hesitation. Michael didn't need to hear what he had to say. "It's bad, Michael," James muttered, stepping inside. "We're out of time." Michael sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "I know." James hesitated before asking, "What do we do?" Michael didn't have an answer. For years, he had been the man with solutions, the visionary, the problem solver. Employees looked up to him, partners admired him, competitors envied him. But now he was the man with nothing. "Call an all-hands meeting," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I need to tell them. It's over." James stared at him for a long moment, as if waiting for him to say something else, something hopeful. But when it didn't come, he simply nodded and walked out. As the door clicked shut, Michael collapsed into his chair, burying his face in his hands. How had it come to this? An unexpected voice. The office was eerily silent when the door creaked open again. Michael assumed it was James returning with more bad news, but when he looked up, he was surprised. Standing hesitantly in the doorway was Lily Carter, an intern, quiet, observant, barely noticeable among the high-powered executives that filled the office each day. She clutched a small notebook to her chest, her eyes filled with something unusual. Not pity, not fear, but belief. "What is it, Lily?" Michael asked, exhaustion lacing his voice. She stepped forward, hesitant but resolute. "Mr. Davenport, can I say something?" Michael gestured vaguely, too tired to object. She inhaled deeply, then spoke 3 simple words. "Remember why you started." Silence filled the room. Michael's breath hitched. He hadn't noticed he had dropped to his knees, his hands gripping the edge of his desk. Those words, so simple, yet so powerful, pressed against his chest like a weight. Not a burden, but a reminder. Lily stood frozen, unsure if she had crossed a line. Michael's throat tightened as he whispered, "Why did you say that?" She hesitated. "Because I've been watching you, Mr. Davenport. You built something incredible, but somewhere along the way, you forgot." A silence stretched between them, deeper than words could fill. For the first time in months, Michael felt something cut through the fog of hopelessness. A memory. A lost purpose. 20 years ago. A younger, hungrier Michael sat in his tiny apartment, surrounded by blueprints, business plans, and a second-hand laptop that barely worked. His heart pounded with excitement. "This is it," he whispered to himself. "This is how I change everything." Back then, he wasn't thinking about profits, stock prices, or expansion. He was thinking about impact. His company had started with one goal: to help small businesses streamline their operations through technology. It wasn't about greed. It was about making a difference. He had fought through sleepless nights, rejections, and the crushing doubt that crept in with every failure. But he had never given up. Now he was about to walk away. A spark reignited. Michael's fingers clenched into fists as he lifted his head. His weary eyes locked onto Lily, the intern who had just reminded him who he was. "You?" He took a shaky breath. "You have no idea what you just did." Lily's eyes widened. "Did I say something wrong?" Michael let out a soft, disbelieving chuckle. "No, you said something right." The exhaustion in his body was still there, but something had shifted. A spark, a flicker of hope. The all-hands meeting was still scheduled. But now, instead of announcing the company's closure, he had one last fight left in him. Michael pushed himself off the floor, his heart pounding, not with fear this time, but with something he hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. Lily watched cautiously, unsure what was happening. Michael straightened his tie, squared his shoulders, and turned toward her. "Thank you, Lily," he said, his voice steady now. "I think you just saved this company." Her eyes widened. "I did." Michael exhaled, nodding. "I don't know how, but I'm not giving up. Not yet." With newfound determination, he grabbed his phone and dialed James. The line clicked. "Michael, we're ready in the conference room," James said grimly. "Are you on your way?" Michael glanced at his desk, the mess of unpaid invoices, rejection letters, and failed strategies. Then, without hesitation, he swept them all into the trash. "I'll be there in 5 minutes," he said. "But we're not shutting down. We're fighting back." A shift in the air. The conference room was tense. Employees sat in silence, expecting bad news. Whispers spread through the room. Some were already planning their exit strategies. James stood at the front, flipping through financial reports, looking as if he had already accepted defeat. Then, the doors swung open. Michael walked in, but not like a defeated man, like a leader with fire in his eyes. He strode to the front, glanced at the tired, frustrated faces before him, and took a deep breath. "I know why you're all here." Silence. "You think I'm going to tell you it's over, that Davenport Industries is finished?" No one spoke, but the look on their faces said it all. That was exactly what they were expecting. Michael shook his head. "That's not what's happening today." A murmur rippled through the crowd. James blinked in confusion. Michael continued, his voice gaining strength. "I'll be honest with you. We're in trouble. We're in debt. Our investors have backed out. The world thinks we've already lost. But do you know what I just remembered?" The room leaned in. "I remembered why we started." His words hung in the air. Michael's voice softened, but his conviction never wavered. "We didn't build this company to chase profits or impress investors. We built it because we believed in something. And I refuse to let that go." A heavy silence followed. Then, unexpectedly, James spoke. "So, what now?" Michael's lips curled into a determined smile. "Now," he turned to the team, his voice resolute. "Now, we do the impossible. The impossible comeback begins." A hush fell over the conference room as Michael Davenport stood at the front, his voice ringing with newfound determination. "Now, we do the impossible." Every face in the room bore the same expression: skepticism, exhaustion, and disbelief. These were people who had spent months watching their once thriving company crumble. They had seen the plummeting numbers, the failed investor meetings, the layoffs, the mounting debts. For weeks, the Davenport Industries office had been filled with whispered conversations about who would leave next, who would jump ship before it all collapsed. And yet, here was Michael standing before them, telling them they still had a fight left in them. James Carter, the CFO, was the first to break the silence. He adjusted his glasses and crossed his arms, clearly trying to choose his words carefully. "Michael," he said, his voice steady but uncertain, "I admire the optimism, but let's be realistic. We have no capital, no investors, no backup plan. What exactly are you proposing?" Michael turned to the room, scanning the dozens of faces staring back at him. "I'll be honest with you," he said. "We're not in a good place. But I refuse to believe that we built this company just to watch it die. So, we're going back to our roots. A murmur rippled through the room. James frowned. Our roots? Michael nodded. We built this company for small businesses. We wanted to create technology that helped the underdogs, the dreamers, the ones no one else took seriously. But somewhere along the way, we started chasing big contracts, big investors, big partnerships, and that's where we lost our way. Some employees shifted in their seats, considering his words. Others remained doubtful. So, what are you saying? One of the marketing directors asked. That we stopped trying to be a major tech company. Michael shook his head. No, I'm saying that instead of chasing billion-dollar clients who don't care if we survive, we turn back to the people who need us most. If we can prove that we're still valuable to small businesses, if we can get them to believe in us again, then we won't need to beg investors for money. James let out a slow breath. That sounds great in theory, Michael, but we still have a cash flow problem. If we don't bring in revenue immediately, we won't even last another month. Michael turned to Lily, the intern who had unknowingly reignited his fire. Lily, he said, what would you do? Lily's eyes widened as every head in the room turned to her. Me, she stammered. Michael nodded. Yes, I want to hear what you think. Lily hesitated. She was just an intern. She wasn't a CEO, an executive, or even a full-time employee. What could she possibly contribute? But then she took a deep breath. What if we crowdfunded? She said. Silence. James raised an eyebrow. You want us to ask for donations? Lily shook her head quickly. No, not donations. Pre-orders. If we can get small businesses to believe in what we're doing, maybe they'll be willing to pay for our product in advance. It won't solve everything, but it could buy us time. A few executives exchanged skeptical glances. Michael, however, was grinning. Brilliant, he murmured. The new plan. The conference room buzzed with renewed energy as Michael and his team mapped out their comeback strategy. 1. Revamp the product. Their technology was solid, but they needed to fine-tune it to directly address small business needs. They would strip away unnecessary corporate features and make it simpler, more efficient, and more affordable. 2. Create a crowdfunding campaign. Instead of relying on investors, they would turn to the people they originally built the company for. If small business owners saw value in their product, they would pre-order it, giving the company immediate funding to stay afloat. 3. Tell their story. Michael would personally record a message, not as a CEO begging for help, but as a founder returning to his purpose. They would be transparent about their struggles and ask people to believe in them one more time. The energy in the room shifted. People who had come in expecting to be told the company was shutting down were now brainstorming ways to save it. For the first time in months, hope returned. A message from the heart. That afternoon, the media team set up a simple camera in Michael's office. No fancy scripts. No overproduced effects. Just Michael, speaking from the heart. As the camera rolled, he took a deep breath and began. I won't lie to you. Davenport Industries is in trouble. We made mistakes. We lost sight of what mattered. And because of that, we're on the verge of shutting down. But I started this company for a reason. Not to chase profits, not to impress investors, but to help small businesses, people like you, thrive. Somewhere along the way, I forgot that. But today, I remember. I'm not asking for charity. I'm asking for belief. If you still believe in us, if you still believe that we can help you, then pre-order our software today. If we can hit our goal in the next 2 weeks, we'll keep fighting. If not, he exhaled, looking straight into the camera. Then we'll accept defeat. But I don't believe that's going to happen. Because I believe in you. And I believe in us. Going viral. The video was posted to their website, social media pages, and emailed to every past client. At first, nothing happened. An hour passed. Then 2. Then suddenly, The first pre-order came in. Then another. And another. By the next morning, hundreds of small businesses had placed pre-orders. Their campaign began gaining traction, being shared across social media, and business owners started posting messages of support. Davenport Software helped my company grow. I'll gladly support them again. Small businesses need tech like this. Let's keep them alive. They're making a comeback the right way. I believe in them. By the end of the week, they had raised $250,000, halfway to their goal. James, who had been skeptical the entire time, could barely contain his disbelief. This is actually working," he murmured. Michael clapped a hand on his shoulder, smiling, and we're just getting started. The turning point. The momentum didn't stop. Press outlets began covering their story, admiring their bold strategy. Competitors, who had once written them off, now watched in shock as Davenport Industries clawed its way back to life. By the 2-week deadline, something incredible happened. They didn't just reach their goal. They exceeded it, raising $600,000, enough to keep the company alive and fully relaunch their software. The office erupted into cheers as the final numbers rolled in. Employees, who had once felt hopeless, were now celebrating, hugging, crying tears of relief. And at the center of it all stood Michael Davenport, the man who had been ready to give up, but who now had a future once more. And beside him, Lily, the intern who had unknowingly saved everything with 3 simple words. Remember why you started. The rise of Davenport Industries. The energy inside Davenport Industries was electric. A company that had once stood at the edge of complete collapse had done the unthinkable. It had survived. More than that, it had found a new beginning. As the final numbers of the crowdfunding campaign rolled in, confirming that they had exceeded their goal, the office erupted into celebration. Laughter, cheers, and even a few tears filled the space. Employees who had once packed up their desks, preparing to walk away, were now hugging each other, exhilarated by the victory they never saw coming. For the first time in months, there was hope. And at the center of it all stood Michael Davenport, the man who had been ready to give up, the man who had forgotten his purpose, the man who had rediscovered his fire. And beside him stood Lily Carter, the intern whose 3 simple words had changed everything. Remember why you started. A CEO transformed. Michael stepped into his office, closing the door behind him. For the first time in months, he could finally breathe. He turned to his desk, the same desk that had once been covered in rejection letters, unpaid invoices, and failed strategies. Now it was clean, cleared of the past. He ran his hand over the surface and exhaled. They had done it. They had pulled the company back from the edge. But now, the real work began. A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," Michael called. The door opened, and Lily stepped inside. She looked uncertain, like she wasn't sure if she was supposed to be there. Michael smiled. "Lily, please, sit." She hesitated before walking forward, perching on the chair across from him. There was a pause before she finally spoke. "I just wanted to say, I never thought I'd be part of something like this. It's incredible what you've done, Mr. Davenport." Michael chuckled. "What we've done, Lily?" Her eyes widened. "Me?" "Yes," he said, leaning forward. "You were the first person in this entire company to remind me of something I had forgotten. Something that no financial report, no investor, no executive had the courage to tell me. You saw something in me when even I didn't. And because of that, this company still exists today." Lily's face turned red. "I just said 3 words. Michael smiled. And those 3 words saved everything. She fidgeted, unsure how to respond. After a moment, Michael leaned back in his chair. "Tell me something, Lily. What are your plans after your internship?" Lily blinked. Well, I was hoping to find a full-time job. Maybe in marketing, maybe in product development. I don't know yet." Michael nodded slowly, considering something. Then he stood up, walked over to his desk drawer, and pulled out a folder. Lily watched, confused, as he slid it across the desk to her. She hesitated before opening it, then gasped. Inside was a full-time employment offer. Lily's head snapped up. What? What is this? Michael grinned. It's an offer for a permanent position at Davenport Industries, effective immediately, if you'll accept it. Lily stared at him in shock. But I'm just an intern. Michael smirked. Not anymore. Lily's hand shook as she looked down at the offer again. Are you sure? Michael nodded. I've never been more sure of anything. Tears welled in her eyes. Thank you, Mr. Davenport. I don't know what to say. Michael stood up and extended his hand. Say yes. Lily beamed as she shook his hand. Yes. And just like that, the intern who had changed everything was now officially part of the company she helped save. The legacy continues. The next 6 months were a whirlwind. With the funds from the pre-orders, Davenport Industries launched their new product, tailor-made for small businesses. The response was overwhelming. Clients raved about its simplicity, efficiency, and affordability. Word spread fast. Soon, more businesses wanted in. Orders skyrocketed. New investors, the same ones who had once walked away, came knocking on Michael's door. But this time, he wasn't chasing them. They were chasing him. Davenport Industries wasn't just back, it was thriving. And Michael? He was a changed man. No longer a CEO obsessed with numbers and power. He was now a leader focused on impact, on purpose, on people. And every time he felt himself slipping, every time he started to lose sight of what truly mattered, he would remember the moment an intern stood in his doorway and reminded him of the most important lesson of all. Remember why you started. Epilogue. A full circle moment. 1 year later, Michael found himself standing at the front of the conference room once again. But this time, it wasn't for a crisis meeting. It was for a celebration. The company was thriving, and they had just hit a milestone: minus 10,000 small businesses using their product. As the team clapped and cheered, Michael turned to his employees, his family, and smiled. He raised a glass. To everyone in this room, he said, to the ones who stayed, the ones who believed, and the ones who fought when it seemed like all hope was lost. His eyes found Lily, now a full-time product strategist, sitting near the front with a proud smile. And to the ones who reminded us why we started, he added. Lily's smile grew wider. They clinked their glasses, and for the first time in a long time, Michael knew. This wasn't just a company. It was a legacy, and it had only just begun. This concludes the story. Thank you for watching until the end. I hope you found it enjoyable. If you did, please consider liking the video and sharing it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and activate the notification bell for more captivating stories. Have a great day.